Debbie Doniger. This is going to be so fun.
Oh,
Debbie,
I do have a dog.
the dogs. Can we get that going? Oh my God.
How are you?
You know, relatively okay. We've like we'll spend a second saying that this is really horrible for so many people, and it's been, you know, we could sit here for an hour and discuss the sort of the sad aspects. But putting that aside for just, you know, an hour,
Yeah.
I'm doing well. I'm doing well.
That's so good. And the family's okay? The kid, most importantly?
Yeah.
That's good.
You know, I think in a fun way, this is a time just to bring the family together.
Yeah.
And, you know, and you've got kids, it's the same. And, you know, you really, I mean, this is real. This is totally real.
Yeah. I know. I hope our industry can get going again. I think there's, you know, a myopic view of our industry a little bit. Like you just, you know, you see us and we're golf pros and we teach, but there's so, you know, it's with every business. There's a trickle down effect and so many people are affected in our industry. And I mean, the faster we can slowly move. Yeah. It helps so many people. You don't even, the layman person thinking about golf doesn't understand.
Oh yeah. Oh, so we have about 300 employees at Woodmont, and a good amount of them are on our grounds crew. So 70% of our staff is out of work right now. Now,
Right.
we are in a pretty good situation financially to be able to pay them, if not 100%, at least some. But I think there's just a lot. First of all, that's not going to happen forever. And so instead of having, you know, full crew doing stuff, we've got everybody else kind of pitching in. We've got our, you know, our full professional staff of teachers and everybody, director of golf, are like out there on mowers and you know, heavy machinery. It's a little dangerous, but
I know.
Who knows what the golf course is going to look like after this?
I don't need to be on any heavy machinery.
How are you doing?
Personally, look, I mean, we're very lucky. And first and foremost, my kids are good and healthy. It just, you know, throws their worlds up in the air. I think like after having kids, you just, for most of us, I just have a different perspective on everything because it's really, you know, I worry so much about them, but we'll make it through. And they're fun. Like they're so adaptable. So we'll see how the world, you know, reworks itself for them mainly, because you and I will be fine.
Yeah, you're doing homeschooling. I mean, you're homeschooling your kids right now, ish.
I mean, ish. No, our school is super organized. They're really good. Both kids are older than yours, so they're on their computers right now, and they're very self-sufficient. That's the other thing I think, because we're golf pros. I mean, they've learned to be independent in some fashion. You know, we're not home on the weekends, and that's always been that way for their entire life. And they're like, okay, bye.
Bye. Yeah. And there's going to be, it'd just be interesting to see what kind of fingerprint that this month, these last 2 months, this 6 months ahead of us. Kevin goes, Kev's okay too. Hello, the husband.
He's always fine. He's good. We're good. Yeah, it's fine. Good. Yeah.
So, but okay, you're in New York, and there's so many things I want to talk to you about, but you're in New York.
Okay, go.
And are your courses open right now?
We are slowly opening, but we are still deemed non-essential. So we have to act more in a security manner to make sure that everybody is following the proper protocols, but that's not a problem. Of course, everybody is doing that and being very safe and careful. So we're good.
So are you still teaching right now?
I do some online lessons with my students and FaceTime lessons and some, you know, stuff like that, but it's not at all what it should be. I mean, I'm not an online teacher like some of our peers. So you don't have that steady stream of income the way they may have, but that's their business. You know, that's
Yeah.
not my business.
How are you making that work with online? Like technically, what are you doing with your online stuff?
So it's interesting.
FaceTime?
Yeah, my students will send me their swings,
Mhm.
and I will look at them and I will dissect them, and then send them back either movements that I would like to see or prefer. And I have so many of their old swings, so I may bring up a swing where they were doing it better, and then we get on
Mhm.
FaceTime Live and totally do it on the range.
Great. So you have a little sense of where they are from the slow-mo or whatever, the video, the pre-recorded video, and then you
For
get it.
sure.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's a quick. Are you using any particular apps for all of this besides FaceTime?
I use Huddle. Uh, I use Coach Now a little bit
Mhm.
and FaceTime.
Mhm.
How are you doing? Are you doing the same?
So I've been using Coach Now for a long time, and I love it. I love Coach Now. I'm totally in deep,
Mm-hmm.
and
Hi, Suze.
Susie, look what you wrote. Susie, we've got the secret. But there's a lot of there's a lot of guys that don't want to hear about our hair.
Is that what she say about our hair?
She said our hairs are on point. Our hairdresser's still working. Yeah, no. Yeah, no. Um, so so Coach Now is pretty cool because you can pull people in and then you have the online locker. I mean, but
Mm-hmm.
for anybody that doesn't know Coach Now, and the online locker essentially is just basically an account that can throw a whole bunch of videos in there. I can update people at once. I can update people individually, and or we can do that because you do it too. So I've been what I like about Coach Now is I can add lines and voiceovers. I can keep it all in one place. So if somebody sends me an email or whatever their video, they can put it straight in
Yep.
to, which I like because then it keeps it really organized.
Yep.
So I have just been keeping track of people individually, and I'm not doing official lessons. I'm just kind of checking in and saying, hey, if you're practicing, just shoot me a video. I want to make sure that things are, we're not going to like veer off the road. Um,
That's good.
I don't want to like pull you out of a ditch when we get back to
No,
call.
that's good. That's good. I mean,
Yeah,
people left to their own devices can really make some huge mistakes.
yeah,
You know, I've seen that. Or they read tips or they see things and then they think, oh, maybe that's good for my swing. And next thing you know, they're actually doing it. And it
you know
may have
that's
nothing
the
to do with their swing.
okay. So let's stay on that topic for a second because I think that's a big issue right now, more than ever because everybody's glued to their screen. So what are they doing? They're doing stuff that they kind of wish they could be doing, which is golf. They're looking at golf. They're either reading the news or looking at golf if they golf, or something interesting. Maybe cooking if you like to cook. But for the golfers, they're all looking at golf.
Yeah.
So the question is, where do you draw the line for what you need and what you don't need? And how do you know whether you need to go back and do something better or whether you should just move through it? Like, do I really need to switch the top of my swing so that it's flatter or not?
Right.
You know,
I would hope that our students would have the wherewithal and the knowledge to shoot us a text and say, hey, is this good for my swing? Now, it might be good. And I would say, oh, that's pretty good. You might want to do that. But more often than not, it's not right. It's not the right fit. And I would hope that my students would understand that we have a very clear understanding of the game plan and the way their bodies move and their measurements and what their desire is and their goals. So I would hope that they would check in with me, but that doesn't happen all the time. And then you have to unravel the mess, or you just say, you know what, this is not for you. But there's a lot of
right.
great information out there, and it's good to bring your golf IQ up. And a lot of our friends are doing some great stuff and great content. It just, you have to make sure it applies to you.
Yeah, that's right. I think you're making a good point, a couple of good points that I don't worry so much about my own students wandering off because generally speaking, they know that I have a pretty I'm pretty accessible. You just shoot me a text, put it in
Right.
Coach Now, and I'm going to read it. It's,
Right.
I'm not a Luddite. I'm there. I'm just right there in some cloud. Um, it's the people that aren't working with coaches that I sort of worry about. It's like the stragglers little that show up, and they've been on this journey on their own, picking and there have been a few times where someone's come to me and I'm so impressed with their golf IQ and the way they've managed to put it together. So it's possible. It's totally possible.
Yep. And I also find it interesting because a couple of my friends, this is, like I said in the beginning, this is what they do. They do online instruction. And so
Yeah.
they do forge a relationship with maybe somebody that they never see face to face. Maybe they eventually do. And they get the job done. And I give them a lot of credit because, to me, I've only done face to face. So for me to jump into that realm is a little bit of a different animal. I mean, it can be done and they're doing it, and I give them a lot of credit.
Yeah. So, all right. I think there are a couple of people that probably don't know your background. So I want you just to brag a little bit about your illustrious playing career.
I actually did play for them. So the abridged version is that I've been playing since I'm
Still going to
7
be
years.
15 minutes long.
Yeah, right. Since I'm 7 years old. And my first teacher, I don't even think you know this, was Shirley Spork. And she's one of the founders of the LPGA.
I didn't know that.
I know. So that's kind of interesting. And she was my teacher from like 8 to 12 years old, and a wonderful person, and really did help me love the game. Then, 12 years old, I decided to quit all my other sports. And I said to my parents, which you would like too, because I know your background a little bit. I come from a highly academic family. And at 12 years old, I said, I want to go play the tour, which, for some families might be like, you're insane. Like, we don't even know what you're saying. But thank goodness my parents were like, okay, we'll feed your passion. So at the time I was playing Met section events as a junior, and one of my good friends to this day, she's my oldest friend, Margaret Platt, who actually did play the tour. Her teacher was Jim McLean. So I started with Jim when I was 12, and very fortunate to have him as my teacher all the way through junior golf. I played at North Carolina with Susie, who's watching. We were just the best team, had so much fun. And then played amateur golf, turned professional, played the European tour, and I quit playing in about the mid 90s.
And you were ACC champ in college, by the way. Saw that.
Yes. And that was one of my goals too. I wrote it down and actually had it happen, which is kind of cool because sometimes that just doesn't happen. Anyway, and then I started working for Jim at Doral. He sent me out to PGA West pretty early on, and I thought that was a really smart decision. We had a golf school in California with Carl Welty, and he had me do a ton of work with Carl. If nobody knows who Carl Welty is, just go Google him. He's one of Jim's close friends who has since passed away, and really learned how to video, how to look at things, how to look at the golf swing. And plus, we had some top 100 teachers up there. And then Jim brought me back to Miami, to Doral, and I was there full time for years and years and years. Oh, there's Margie. Hi, Margs. And then started to come back to the Northeast, back and forth, and we had to make a decision with the kids. And so I've been at my job, I'm director of instruction at Glen Arbor for 19 years now. And one could say that is a very long time, but I happen to work with, the guys that I work with are supportive, respectful, and some of my very close friends. In fact, Rob, who's my director of golf, we played AJGA together. So like, that's how small the golf world is if people don't understand. And Emma, who just joined, I played junior golf with her too. And she's one of my close friends. So I just have always been in a great working environment and work situation, and they support me. And one of the things that I love to do is go and watch other teachers teach. So, which Jim always encouraged, by the way, but when we were knee deep in golf schools, which is interesting, we would see like over 10,000 people a year. I think the number was staggering. And there really wasn't time. And also golf schools at that time were so competitive. So there were a bunch of teachers that were really competitive, and you couldn't really just go and go watch Ledbetter, especially coming from a McLean background, and vice versa. But now times have totally changed. And I would say within the last 6 years, there have been some instrumental people in my life. One would be Mike Adams, and I've spent an enormous amount of time with him. If nobody knows who Mike is, I would go check him out. But the value, and I'm gonna make it all come together for people that don't understand. So Jim's system of teaching, he was really quite brilliant at it and creative. And what he allowed us to do was understand where the body could and couldn't be, and parameters where it could be, and you could play good golf. And you know this because you were with us at Doral. And where the club can and can't be. So we had a nice liberal area in which to coach from, always remembering that a lot of things work in the golf swing. So be very careful with what you decide to change or not change or keep and not keep. So we do that for 20, 25 years. Mike Adams comes back into my life. I've known Mike since I'm a teenager because he was also working with so many good junior and college and professional players. And put some of the puzzle pieces back in because it was like, well, why does somebody have a strong right-hand grip? I may not change it. I may, but there might be a reason why. And so Mike brought in all these cool measurements into play and started to bridge the gap and understand, well, this is why this person does this, and that's okay.
Go into that a little bit. What measurements?
So for example, there's more than a right hand grip measurement than the one I'm going to show you, but just simply, you know, if you hold your shoulders together and you swing halfway back, where is your right hand? That there are other ones that dovetail with that. If I'm not thoroughly happy with that, you could just hold the club with your right hand and swing it halfway back and halfway through. But you're looking at the right hand, the right forearm, and the elbow, and where those pieces go and how that stabilizes the club face. So rather than you and I saying, oh, that person's got a very weak right hand, maybe it should be like that. And therefore, the path and plane and attack angle will be X and Y. Now, it's up to you whether you and I want to move within that to help them with their ball flight. And then I'll explain the next piece would be Ben Shear, who's a top trainer on tour and in the world of sport. And so for the last 5 or 6 years with Ben, who happens to be one of my closest friends, even put more of those puzzle pieces together because, so for example, one of Mike's tests is wingspan. If your wingspan is longer than your height, your arms at the top of the swing will be or should be above your shoulder plane. How much depends on how long it is. Okay, just take that into your head and your consideration if you're a golfer and you're thinking about this. So therefore, you need a little more lateral motion and transition to slot the club, if that's what the measurements turn out to be. But what if you don't have enough, internal shoulder rotation or external shoulder rotation for that matter? What if you don't have either one? So then where's the workaround? If you want the workaround. So I think my time with Jim, Ben, and Mike have put it all together. And that now comes the art of coaching, which I think comes from a lot of experience, being able to communicate the message so that the student understands, pare it down so it's simple in your head and you're not saying all this.
Right.
And then just so everybody knows, then I have gone out and spent time before COVID. I went out to Texas and I hung out with Chuck Cook, which I've done for the last 2 years, and Randy Smith and Butch Harmon and Bill Harmon. And so you have all these amazing people that pave the way for you and I who are so open. Ledbetter is awesome and, accessible, and they're generous. And by the way, they're also voracious learners to this day. To this day, those gentlemen, Mike, Chuck, Led, Jim, all of them, all the ones that I want to befriend and have in my corner are just as studious and into golf.
Add Mike Bender, because he's in every summit that I ever go to.
And I watched him teach before the PGA show.
Yeah.
I've gone the last 2 years. Mike is awesome, and he has his own way, and that's fine. You know, if you and I pick up 2 or 3 things, and by the way, he's an awesome person. You know, so all these people that pave the way for me, I just think should have all the credit in the world and all the accolades. They deserve them all of them. And that's the abridged version of where I am today.
It's a wonderful story, Deb. I mean, you've got an incredible arc of a career here that started strong and it just stayed strong the whole way. And you're obviously so bright, so you can put these things in places that you're going to use later and kind of hold on to stuff. What I really like about you, Deb, too, is you can work with all levels, from top to, you know, the highest competitive level to very first swing, doesn't know what to do.
Yeah. And I think when I've heard you interviewed as well, your population at your club is not necessarily the higher end player. And when you hear people talk about, teachers talk about tour players, it's such cool information. But the fact of the matter is that's not who you and I are teaching the bulk of the day. There are tour teachers and their job is tough. You think it's easy. It's not so easy.
I think it's a different echelon. I shouldn't even use echelon because that suggests it's higher or lower, but it's just a very different environment when you're working with someone who can physically do anything you ask them to do, by and large. Can you do this? Yeah. Like, someone could easily hit a fade, or that's not the issue. The issue is, how are you going to get someone to perform? You know, and there are many other little things that kind of creep up. Someone has tendencies that kind of drift. Okay, so you're managing tiny little tweaks, and you're managing someone's mind, and you're managing their health so that there's longevity and strategy that's going to work on, you know, Friday, get them through to Sunday, get them in the last round. I mean, that's just the conversations, I think, tend to be a lot different than when someone's trying to manage a skill and they're like in the thick of actually trying to make contact with it, you know, and then maybe trying to diagnose, well, where in my game do I have those weak links? What's the part of my game? This is where I love Arcos. Where's the part of my game that's costing me the most strokes? Where do I need to spend time with that? I mean, shot link data is great on tour. Yeah, I think obviously people can moneyball those numbers just as well now as an amateur can. It's probably a little easier, you know, to figure out where someone's weak links are if they're 15 handicap than if they're a +3.
Yeah, so there's a lot to unpack there, but I would say one of the things that Jim did that was so helpful as well, McLean, is he definitely gave us a blueprint on how to teach beginners, intermediate, and advanced players. And all of them are different. Regardless, I like all my players to be physically evaluated. Period, end of story. I need to know what you can do and what you can't do, why it could be good. If your imbalance is a good imbalance, you know, like you can really get into the weeds and it could all be good or it may not be good, right? So everybody needs to be evaluated, in my opinion. How deep you go is probably based on the ability level. But then I'll jump to the tour players. When I'm out on tour with Sirius and I get to be on the range and I get to hang out with the Pete Cowens and Sean and Chris Como, and who are all friends, by the way. And I watch from a distance. Sometimes I get in there with them and say, hey, what's going on? What are you doing? It's a different animal. If your tour player isn't right on, spot on, and I see grinding going on, and I do on a Monday and a Tuesday and a Wednesday, and there's frustration, and I get it. I can empathize, I can sympathize, and sometimes it's not pretty. It's really fascinating. I've seen horrible warm-ups on tour, and then the player comes in and shoots 62, which I talk about a lot on air. I've seen great warm-ups and the player, what the bed coming in as well. So, and to your point, whether it's ShotLink or using Mark Brody to understand where the low-hanging fruit is,
Right.
that's really important out there. The trainers, the physios, the 3D, the force plates, there's so much technology, but I think you have to be able to use it and extrapolate what's right for that person. But taking all that, I also use that with my D1 top players, D2, D3. A, I want to know what they're doing when they're playing well. B, I like to create a team around them. We want the path of least resistance. We don't want injuries. We want them to get better. And I do love that they go to college knowing what their plan is, so that they don't hear extraneous information, and then all of a sudden your freshman year is horrendous.
Right.
And that could be in the gym too. So I like to create teams around people, but first and foremost, knowing what your body can and can't do. As Ben says, like, form dictates function, and I truly believe that. But there are workarounds.
Yeah, there for sure. Well, there have to be. I mean, you can't tell someone that they can't play golf because they have a bad right shoulder.
Because you can't turn.
Yeah, sorry, you're not going to be able to play. No, of course not. Right. Anybody can play. I mean, working with Wounded Warriors, hello. I've got, some people with no legs and they're playing golf.
Yeah, PJ Hope is a wonderful program, and I know in the Met section we do a lot with the veterans as well. You're 100% correct with prosthetic limbs. There's always workarounds, but I do think you need to be with experienced teachers and communicate the message the best you can.
That's right. And I think the best coaches too really understand that who's in front of you may not want to do what you think that they should be doing in terms of goals. Somebody they just want to go out and participate, and they want to hit the ball so that they are on the fairway. Don't really need to feel like they're hitting it 200 yards, maybe up to 160 yards off the tee is just fine.
You're 100% correct. I've done, Mark Sweeney too, for those of, have you looked into Gameforge?
No.
It's so good. Go look into it. They've also done their own.
What is it? I haven't even heard of it.
Oh my God. You're going to love this. Gameforge, Forge. It's Mark Sweeney, who's a friend of mine. He's the guy that did Aim Point, for those of you that don't know out there. But the way he's dissected the information, especially with college players, it's my Gameforge. Thanks, Kev.
Thanks, Kev.
We just watched a seminar on it, but I've talked to Mark about it, and just you know what? There's your teaser. So after we get off, you're going to look, but they disseminated a lot of information. So for example, if you're a beginner golfer and you only hit 6 greens around, where is your low hanging fruit? So it's probably 0 to 20 yards off the green. And they give a pretty broad area for you to be in, 12 feet around the hole. However, if I put 20 balls around the green, some in deep rough, some in weird lies, some off really tight lies, can you really get 12 feet within the hole 20 times? Not so much. And then also, if you're only hitting 6 greens around, like I said, 3 greens need to be a little closer, proximity to the hole. We got to make it a little bit closer. Half of the greens you're hitting with the regulation. Let's try and get closer to the hole than you are, so we can eliminate those 3 putts. So Mark has looked at the information a little bit differently, and I think you in particular will really like it.
If it's numbers, I'll like it. So when I like to look at, when someone tells me, I play from the white tees or the blue tees, I'm like, no, what yardage are you playing from? Let's start there. And how do you figure out I love the Tee It Forward program that PGA put forth. I show almost everybody this and really try to educate people as to how far they hit off of the tee and what they're hitting in. Like, let's just look at your game and assess this and figure out. I think there's a social issue with some people. They don't want to play from different tees as their friends. I get it. But at the same time, if you're hitting a 3-wood in every single time and you're not hitting the green, you're probably not playing from the right tees.
Right.
What do you,
I know.
do you get into that with players?
Well, I play with the men all the time, and I play from wherever they want to play from. If they want to play from the tips, I'll go play
Well,
from the tips.
that's different. That's fine. Same here.
Totally. But the
But
thing is, they see me and I'm hitting fairway woods in. I'm a good player, so I'm going to get it, pretty close, or my miss isn't going to be that bad. They playing from tees they shouldn't be playing from. It's like a mess. It's a complete and total mess. So I'm like,
so
why
you're
are we
making them
doing
feel
this?
bad. So Debbie, you're basically slapping them around. That's nice.
Well,
Nice of you.
it's an interesting dichotomy because they're not expecting it if it's a new client, but
But you're a
why?
baller.
I
Come
know,
on.
but why make this harder than it needs to be? And if scoring is our main goal and just shoot the lowest score possible, then we need to take yardage into consideration for sure. And I'm sorry, if you're hitting fairway woods, I don't know how many greens in regulation an intermediate player is actually going to hit.
Yeah. Susie says every course needs a tee at 4,400, 4,500 yards, not in the fairway, a real tee. Yeah. Why do new golfers as they age only get one choice? I totally agree with that from start to finish. We did a good job of that this year at Woodmont, just getting some tees in there that are just realistic. And we've got juniors, we've got people that are over 80, we've got people that are just learning.
And was there any pushback, or were they like, oh, this is awesome?
No, I think it's no, it's awesome. I think what happens is the people that are comfortably playing from 6,000 yards just don't think about it like that. They just don't. It's just not on their radar.
No, I think on my Instagram a few months ago, to Susie's point, I did post something about yardages, and she's right. It is so much lower than where the forward tees really are in relation to how far you hit the ball.
Yeah.
And it's almost mind-boggling.
Women start and die on one tee. It's totally true. I've got beginners, literally beginners, that are playing from the same tee as, our club champ, who's, a single-digit handicap.
Yeah.
Right?
It's absurd.
And then somebody has a bet. Yeah. And then the other thing is you try to move a male to the forward tees, and in their mind, they're thinking, oh, that's the ladies' tees. I'm not going to the ladies' tees. But if there were a tee before the ladies, the forward tees, then it wouldn't be the farthest one up.
Right. Or just have no colors on the tees. And, I think it's up to us to maybe break this stigma for sure.
Yeah.
But I also have clients where I'm like, you know what? It's wet. It's windy. Let's go play up a forward tee. And they're like, okay. That's a good excuse.
Dave Phillips at TPI had a really great idea. I don't know if he's made this public. It's an app that kind of gathers information about your game, and so you bring it with you when you play, and when there's GPS on it, and so it basically says, all right, go here. So there's no tee markers. There's teeing ground but no tee markers. This is where you're going to start from, right here. I thought that's kind of cool. Like, just takes the whole social aspect out of it, the whole ego thing out of it, and just says, all right, this is purely from a game standpoint. Here's where you should start.
Yep.
Not a bad idea.
Wait, what did Margaret say? We switched tee color.
And it worked great. That's really smart. Yeah, throw the reds back and the black.
They believe they hit it as far as their longer shots. Yes, that's true. I agree with Ben. I mean,
hey, Ben.
And you find
Ben's here.
Yeah, and you find this too.
Wait, what did he say? So the problem is people believe they hit it as far as their longest shot. Yeah, that's right.
Yeah,
it's like I'm going to hit my shot of my life every single time.
Right.
Yeah.
So when you take those averages of 37 irons and they see one, they hit 155, they pull out the 7 at 155 when they're not even remotely going to probably hit that 155. But maybe to Susie's point, and you and I are right here, it's up to us to break the stigma and get them to play at their ability and appropriate level.
And get the dialogue going. Yeah.
Yeah, for sure.
For sure. And maybe we've done this too at Woodmont. Have some events where, you just put people in different spots. Like, okay, this is where you're going to play from. What's
a really fun game? Susie would love this. I know Ben's heard this too, since they're all on with us. But Rotella taught me this. Dr. Bob Rotella is a sports psychologist. But you and I take our students 9 holes, 150 and in.
Yeah.
If that ability level calls for that, and we make every hole a par 3.
Right.
And let's just see how low we can go. If the ability level is worse, we're going to go 100 and in. Because how many people cannot hit the green in 1 from 100 and in if I give you an uphill lie in deep rough and we've got wind off the right?
Bam.
It's not so easy.
Right.
But to your point, those are different games, scoring games that are just fun, and you turn every hole into a par 3.
Yeah. Yeah, totally.
See how low you can go.
I think, yeah, that is one nice thing about having a group. It doesn't have to be a private club, but having some kind of group that you play with, some organization, whether you're at a public course or a private course, some kind of event that can be organized by a PGA professional who's discussing all of this stuff and trying to help the game from a bigger standpoint.
Yeah, Operation 36, Susie just brought up too, is really good.
Yeah, you have to start when you were young. I think it's easier to start when you're young. I don't think you have to. I truly believe that you can start golf at any point. I think from a skill acquisition standpoint, it's harder to start when you're 40, 50, 60, and it just takes longer. There was a really interesting study I read. It was about cortical activity and gray matter changes. So when we learned, this was an fMRI in the brain. So when you learn there's activity in your brain, it shows that there's just different areas of your brain are firing at different times when you're learning goes from one place to another place. Prefrontal cortex tends to move somewhere else later in learning. And they took a group of 20-somethings, and then they took a group of 80-somethings, and they taught them how to juggle. No one knew how to juggle. And so they did a pre-test before, so everybody's brain was, got everybody controlled for whatever. Then they taught them how to juggle, and wouldn't you know, everybody learned how to juggle.
Huh.
Now, the older set, it just took them longer. But they did it. So this, and the other thing is there's this old myth that you're born with the number of neurons your whole life, your brain cells, that's not true. They actually, and the more that you work and you strengthen them and you try to do new things and you change, the more they kind of populate and grow. So I actually, I'm not trying to push back on whoever said, you have to learn when you're young, but in a way I'm pushing right back and saying, no, you don't have to learn. It's a little more of a struggle sometimes, but you can do it. Anyone can do it.
I've had students come to me never playing golf before in their 40s and 50s and have done amazingly well.
Yeah.
If you go back to what Jim said a long time ago, and you can train somebody how to use their arms and their hands and then let the body follow. And if they stick with it and you want to go a little bit deeper and into it, but training the arms and your hands are your only connection to the club, center contact, understanding club face, all those, external stuff as well. You can actually get beginners who have never played pretty good golfers. You can make them into pretty good golfers where they're happy. So what if they use a tee in the fairway? Yeah. Everybody, like you said a long time ago in this conversation, everybody's goals are different. And you can certainly get people to play good golf. It's our job, by the way.
I love the challenge. I'm so competitive. I'm not competitive with other people necessarily, but I'm competitive with myself. If someone doesn't think they can do something, I love figuring out ways that they can make it happen. Paul said, I know you're competitive too. Paul said, as a coach with a new 18 handicap student, what's your starting point looking at their swing? Like when you're looking at their swing, what are you looking at first, Debbie?
As a new student?
Yeah, well, let's say someone comes to your tee and they're an 18 handicap, like, okay, hey, help me. What do you do?
So we go through the interview process. As you know, I like to find out their basic background, injuries, no injuries, what sports they've played, and then a basic 18 handicap. I'm going to go with the 40, 50-year-old. I'll watch their ball flight. What would they like to see if they come to the table with preconceived notions or whatever they would, you know, would like to see if it matches what they're actually doing. And then I do some of Mike's measurements, no question about it. And I start to just gather information in my own head, write it down, and then, you know, midway through, I'm able to sort the information out. And then whatever I say to that student, we can be on our way. And I do like to create game plans and practice programs. And I think that you just have to be, and I'm always very careful because I don't want to make somebody worse and ruin the player, obviously. And I want to be detailed and careful with my information. But I would say, number one, measuring, you know, if I want to bring the launch monitor out just to take the guesswork out, I'm all in. And
so you're really you're kind of figuring out their whole thing. And figuring out what their goals are.
The whole thing, right? Because usually people come to me because they want to get better, and I can create game plans to make that happen. Yeah. And then as we get into the weeds, you know, if we have to do the physical evaluations, which I would implore people to do, then yes, that's what we're going to do. And therefore, we can really take the path of least resistance to get people better. There's no question about it.
So Ben's on. You've been working with Ben for a while. You've been on tons of programs with him too. Tell me about, okay, first two parts. Tell me about who you use when you're at Glen Arbor. And then what are you doing with Ben apart from that?
So, hey, babe. I've got about three.
Who's hey, babe? Who are you talking to?
No, B. I said Ben. B.
Oh.
My chef, too, from my club is on there. He talks about coconut water.
I was like,
yeah, because I was like, let's get some coconut water. I would say that Ben and I have been really good friends for the last 5 years. Like I said, he's been instrumental in also putting all the puzzle pieces together along with Mike and Jim and then all these other great teachers. So I definitely, if I can get members to Ben, he's not always accessible, but because he's on tour and he works with so many clients, usually it's my higher end players that I take to Ben, because what Ben's so brilliant at is he speaks golf, he understands TrackMan, he knows the way I teach, he can work within what I would like to see, and then we have to discuss whether that's even viable.
Tell everybody who Ben Shearer is in case they don't know.
Oh, sorry. If you guys go to benshearergolf.com, you'll see his bio. He's just one of the leading physical trainers on tour, let alone other sports. And he's been doing it. Here's the thing. I've been teaching for over 25 years. I have found, and why I farm out, which at the Teaching and Coaching Summit, my topic was teaching with technology. I farm out things because that's not what I do for 25 plus years. Ben has been doing what I've been doing for that long. I might as well take my students to whom I deem are the best for them. It's the same with 3D. Doc Neal, who's a good friend of both of ours, he's been doing that forever.
Yeah.
Let me go to Doc Neal. Let me go to John Sinclair. Let me go to people who are doing this day in and day out with such precision.
John Sinclair is a great one too.
Yeah, right? I don't want to make a mistake. Yeah. There's no reason for me to pretend that I don't do fitness every day. I mean, I work out every day, but this is not what I do. But the great thing about Ben is he's really good at extracting and extrapolating where that little nuance could be. If it's mobility, stability, strength, speed, and power, where can we get the biggest bang for our buck, and where do we need to start? And sometimes people would say it's mobility, and then Ben would say, not so much. It's actually stability. And so those are the different parts that is so helpful to all my students and his students and players as well. I mean, I know who his tour players are, and I know I'm throwing him a bone, but without Ben, I don't know if they would be as good as they are. You know, sometimes you can't squat as deep as you want to because your pelvis is situated in X or Y, or your hip flexors are A or B. And those are the little nitty gritty details. There's a bunch of people out on tour that are awesome too. It just so happens my relationship is with Ben. And so the amount of information that I've learned from him, and then seeing the student in front of me, and then being able to measure, and then my background with Jim, you can see how it all fits together, where you can get people better faster and without injury, but then also knowing why it's unique and why it works.
Right.
You know, why does it work? And maybe that's a cool thing to figure out.
Right. So I find that all my committed students are willing to take the recommendation that I'll make, whether it's
That's good.
Our in-house, we have a fitness facility, and our director of fitness is TPI certified, and she totally gets it. And so she's got a team of great people. I also work with Jason Mish, who's down the street. He's got a gym that's just for golf, fitness, and exercise training. So tons of juniors, but adults go there too. I can't agree with you more that if you don't have someone on your team, a check's in the mail, Ben.
Good. I'm not making any money.
That can look at things in a skill set that you don't have, then you're missing, you're missing the whole picture. And sometimes people come and say, hey, I've got a trainer and I can tell you this is what's going on. But at least the conversation is there, that your body makes you, hello, your body is like the biggest part of the game right now.
Well, like Mike Adams brings up this, the club resting on the wall isn't going to move. You're going to make it move. So I also think the information coming out of the PhDs that are working on the forces and torques in the handle of the club, and let's just keep it simple. It just means, what's happening in the grip of the club and the handle. I think it's all really cool. And I think golf is moving in a direction that's awesome. One, it's easy to study because the ball's not moving. So we are inherently, when we're doing this stuff, in a controlled environment.
Yeah.
What would be, really interesting is when you take it on the course, and if you could start measuring under pressure and different lies and all that stuff, which is happening. I mean, it's all happening.
Yeah.
I'm just so thankful that I have these incredible people in my corner. But if you are with somebody that, doesn't necessarily take all of this information into account, if anybody's out there looking, just ask your teacher to say, hey, do you know somebody that I can go to where I can understand what I can and can't do? And I think that would be invaluable to the teacher, because we should all be working together to get you better, and invaluable to you yourself.
Totally. I've had a lot of fun with K-Best too. So Jason happens to work with K players. He's got a bunch. So he'll come with me. He'll come watch a lesson, be there for it. We kind of are there together. And I'm looking at, hey, here's what we want the ball to do. The student's part of that process. Here's what we're trying to do. Here's the game plan here. Can you look at it from your lens and look at what's going on from that? The girl over rotates her torso at the top. I need her to practice feeling a little less than 120 degrees of rotation at the top. Can you set that parameter? Yep. The girl goes and works 3 days, 4 days a week at the gym. And then she comes back better because she's got some feedback, and she's got, the ability to have a second set of eyes who's looking at it from a rotation, a mobility standpoint. And then, okay, what do we have to, there's an issue there. Her strength wasn't there. And that's not my expertise, is building someone's strength where they need it. So totally. Okay. Someone said, Ben, Jason, he's good. Colby's going to be an intern with us this year. She said, how important is impact? Do you think that are golfers out there who never have compressed the ball before? Yes. How would you teach that to a beginner?
Well, that's a loaded question, because
go Deb, go. Go Deb, go.
Transition into the downswing is paramount as well, to help foster a really good impact. And so as a new teacher, I would look into that. Your grip can also determine how your angle of attack can and should be, and also for simplicity purposes, your speed or lack thereof. So, you know, there's a range of attack angles that your student can use and still play good golf. Since we're dealing with, you said, a beginner, and you would like a little more angle of attack, if it's a beginner, again, just saying, I've never seen this student before, I probably would work on my measurements, you know, knowing simplistically where the arc or the plane of the swing should be, and their grip. And then for a beginner, arms and hands first. And then if you just want to clip tees out of the ground first and foremost, and then you can vary the height of the tees just to, you know, change it up a little bit. And then you would lower the tees a little bit. You could put a line on the ground and just say, hey, your goal out of 5 swings with the spray paint on the ground, can you get 3? Well, let's see where you hit 3 times. Can you hit the ground after the line?
Just
3 out of 5
looking for 3,
times.
folks. Just looking for 3.
I mean, you can make it as simple as possible, but I would make sure that the right grip is on the club, and that you've given them the best chance to create the proper arc.
You remember, that's great, Deb, that I wouldn't have thought about transition and grip in this particular answer, but I'm glad you brought that up because it's clearly part of it. I was thinking of Jim McLean's chip, pitch, and punch station.
Well, that's a great station for impact. You're right. You're right. You're 100% correct. You know, but different grips incorporate different attack angles and different arm lengths and different, you know, the geometry of the swing is different attack angles as well. So, you know, and then I guess allowing your student to be very cognizant of attack angle. I mean, maybe they intrinsically think they have to lift it in the air to get it up in the air. I don't know what kind of beginner we're dealing with. So
what are your thoughts on lead wrist extension through impact versus lead wrist neutral? Do you work with wrists with beginners, or do you just let them go?
No. I think it goes back to how you hold the club, the right hand, the right forearm, the right elbow.
I love you, Debbie.
And
like, no one's no, we're not air drying our hair here.
And what the ball does. And again, if you start to just measure people, there's a time and place. I mean, wrist action, if it's hurting the club face, then I definitely go and attack club face. I do think face is paramount. Oh, but I'm not, I don't know. Every student's dependent, but you got to get that grip on properly.
Yeah, I think that's great. Okay. Deb, what's the least beneficial thing you see taught to recreational golfers? Oh, wait, Fisher Brygle. You actually also asked about learning online, or you didn't ask, but you asked, like, what's the problem with people finding online instructors? I have no problem with people finding online instructors. My thought on that was, be consistent with a coach, whether it's somebody that you have forged a relationship with online or not. I think my issue is when you go to a buffet and you just pick and choose, and before you know it, you've got peanut butter on your salmon, and you know it's just it's soup sitting on the plate, you know, whatever. So that was my only thing about there. No, I love the online environment for if someone needs that, and financially that's what they need. And
did Jeff think we weren't saying it was okay?
Yeah, well, I think I said something about stragglers, you know, people that didn't have a coach. He said, what's the problem with stragglers? You know, what's the problem with finding out? He said, I was more asking why they seem to not want to come face to face. I don't know. I think the perception is, well, they could be hard to find, or the perception is they're expensive, or the perception is, you know, they might not find the right person. It's the no. Okay, Deb, what's the least beneficial thing you see taught to recreational golfers? That's probably an easy one.
Well, too much information,
yeah.
Not the right information. Yeah. I mean, Jeff, that's a hard thing to say because we don't know the ability level in front of us.
Who is that?
So Jeff Fisher's, he's a very good friend. He and I text all the time about everything and anything going on in golf. He's got a beautiful golf academy out in Arizona, and he just does great stuff with juniors.
Hi, Jeff.
And
Nice to meet you.
so he and I go back and forth all the time.
Oh,
But,
good.
you know, recreational golfers, my gosh, there's a whole host of problems. I think saying too much.
Saying too much. Do you still play recreationally? Paul asked earlier. Do you still play for fun?
I do, absolutely. I love it. I mean, I'm going to play in a tournament if you and I are a team.
Yeah.
That's the one thing I do say. I'm not tournament tough anymore. And for me, there is something to that. And so I like having that buffer if you were my teammate. But I absolutely play in charity events, in pro-ams, with students all around the country, and play fine. I mean, thank God I had Jim as my teacher, and I have some talent and ability. I don't have to do too much. If I have to cram, it's like if Ben's still watching, or, you know, I cram for 2 weeks and I'm fine.
You know, I agree with that too. I mean, Rory McIlroy said that he doesn't play, you know, socially anymore. So I do. I think it's important to play socially. I think it's fun to play, and it kind of keeps my love of it and my perspective and my respect for how hard it is to, you know, to manage when I'm playing with people that are, you know, newer. I love playing.
Yeah, I agree. Like Jim just said, thank you, Jim. So that's Margie, and she played at Auburn. She played on tour. She almost won an event, but she's the same way. Like, she has a great golf swing, no problem. I mean, we were very lucky, but I also think, and it's a whole different argument, but as a teacher, I think you need to be able to play and demonstrate the shots. I think that goes a long way, that you can actually have a good golf swing.
Totally. Is it better to keep it simple or elaborate when it comes to the swing basics? Is it better to keep it simple or elaborate? I think it depends, but I think it depends on the situation and what someone needs to hear and why. And what do you think, Deb?
I think that there are some students that are very technical and analytical, and if they can figure out that technical information, and they themselves and you then simplify that information in a way for them to understand. I mean, you have to know the student in front of you and what they need. I mean, they need to come back. You know, it's a business too. Yeah.
And they need to, you know, they need to understand and synthesize it and be able to feel it, because we're talking about feels.
And a lot of today's world is so technical. So there's no reason why, if that student wants that you can't figure out a way to disseminate the information in a technical way that's applicable to them. And then it's a win-win.
That's right. And if the person understands, from a learning standpoint, if the person understands the principle behind it, they're going to be better judging and assessing how to handle it going forward. You know, somebody really understands what a flat lie is going to do to, you know, where you're going to make impact too far behind it, too far ahead of it. So sometimes explaining things so that someone understands a bigger picture can be quite helpful. But I don't think you need to start talking about moment arms and start using technical, you know, or physics language if it's not going to, you know.
Well, that would be, I'm thinking of one of my D1 students. She's very simple. And if you started going down that road, her head would explode. So that would be that would be a no.
And she could be a brilliant person, but I think in terms of applying it, you know, into a feel and performance, it's just not a helpful way to go.
Yeah, a lot of players don't want to know.
Yeah, it's fine. John Daly.
Yeah.
Does he know? Does Dustin Johnson know?
I don't think he wants to know. Maybe he does, but I've never asked Butch specifically. Well, I kind of have, so I know the answer, but I'd rather Butch answer or Claude. But
that's his story. Deb, we're gonna get cut off. I don't want to get cut off, but this has been so good. These questions are like throwing in here, tailored to the individual, better, faster, without injury is well put. It will help match expectations with practice on. Hey, Grant. Excitement versus nerves. Oh, there's so much we can talk. Deb, you're the best.
No, thank you so much for having me. And I appreciate it very much. And you know that offline as well as now.
Well, I think one thing about you, I don't want to get cut off, but one thing is you've just done so much, and you've really done a lot on your own, and you don't toot your own horn enough. Like, you don't put it out there. You're just doing your thing, and I just want you to I want people to know. I want that spotlight on you.
Aw.
So
Well, thank